Welcome back to the Barca Breakdown. My name is Yusuf, and I'm here with my co-host Adam.
What's up, guys? Let's talk about Barca, Rayo Vallecano, Xavi, and what we're going to do after that first game use, because we've had a few days to let things percolate, and I've noticed across all social media there are a wide array of takes that are very, energetic, right, in what they're saying, these people. And so I see on one side some who are pointing to the fact that, we had 20-plus shots against Rayo, and how on most given days 20-plus shots is going to get you a goal, and that we created enough opportunities that, if our team was just a little bit better at finishing, Raphinha, Pedri had a few golden chances, that we would have indeed won the game. And then on the other side, you see people who say that this Rayo game, the first game of the season, which, like Yus and I will always try and do, make sure people don't blow things out of proportion, kind of take a more measured approach. They'll say we're having the same issues we had last season against teams who play, with 10 men behind the ball and who have a low block, and that Xavi is not able to adapt, and he can't figure out how to beat these teams, and it's going to spell, a whole season of issues against these bottom half teams. And so here we are, right? And I think what we're going to walk through today is kind of the different areas that Xavi's going to have to figure out, learn about, in some situations possibly, get a new player, with some rumors that Dest might be leaving, Umtiti and Braithwaite's contracts might be, basically canceled, and then, Alonso might come. There's a lot of rumors all around Use. And so let's start off with the first one, which was pretty apparent to almost everyone who watched, and it was kind of the shock of the Rayo game, which is that we started Araujo as the right back. And, Yus and I, almost every Barca fan, are ginormous Ronald Araujo fans, right? We love him. He is kind of that lion defender. We get butterflies seeing him kiss the badge and talk about how he wants to play for Barca for the rest of his career. And he is a wonderful center back. But in the game against Rayo, right, we saw him put in that right back spot to give Christensen and Garcia the chance to solidify those two center back positions. And there was something there left to be desired. And, it comes down to a few things, right? I think the number one trend that kind of ties into Araujo and the issues we faced is that there was just too much positional rigidity in the game, and it didn't feel like a lot of players understood kind of where to position, right? And you look at Araujo, and he has done a good job in past Clásicos, as we all know, shutting down Vinicius, right? Being that guy who can go against a really speedy winger who's going to provide a lot of threat. But going forward against a team, with 10 men behind the ball, he just wasn't able to break through and create any sort of havoc. And I think the main thing, if we look at last season, we think about Dani Alves and kind of what Xavi's, preferred role for those fullbacks is that they're supposed to kind of invert, right? If you looked at Dani Alves last season, he was that inverted fullback who kind of acted like a second pivot to help Busquets with the build-up. And, when we didn't have Dani Alves in the Europa League and, Dest was out and hurt, that's kind of where we struggled most against Frankfurt. And so I want to get your take, Yus, because, there's a few different things here, right? One is, are we going to be able, if we're going to stick with Araujo at right back, to train him to be the player who's able to kind of come inside and help facilitate the ball forward and not just stick to the very wings when you already have Dembele on that right side on the, the very right? And the other thing is, will Kounde be the guy to replace him? Is it possible that all this bluster about Sergino Dest is fake, and that, with some more training, we can hope that Sergino Dest will reach kind of his pinnacle and his full potential? What are your thoughts about this right back situation?
Well, I think Araujo is a little more of an aggressive defender, and in his center back position, he likes to be snuffing players out. He likes to be physical with players, but I think in the right back position, it doesn't allow him to do that, and so he feels very uncomfortable. He has to play a different style of football, and I think pushing the ball forward and getting it out to Dembele on that right wing or cutting the ball in the middle is just not a natural tendency of his. So I think he just feels a little bit, I don't want to say confused, but maybe just not confident in the decisions he's supposed to make in that right back position. And as you were talking about the Dani Alves playing an inverted position and cutting into the midfield and maybe drawing defenders, in this Rayo game, for example, a lot of the defenders were already set up in their defense, choking the midfield. And I think that, he wasn't really adding an offensive aspect to that game. Again, he is a defensive player. He's thinking defensively, like, what can I do in these situations, but I just don't think he's accustomed to taking the ball forward. And as we saw in that game, we really relied on the wings. I think Jordi Alba and Ronald Araujo struggled pushing the ball forward with Raphinha and Dembele and creating a situation to open up that final third of the pitch so that the defenders didn't crowd the box or they didn't cover the width so much. And I think those situations, he's just not 100% confident because he hasn't been playing in that position for a long time to really know what to do. And I think that is something that will take time to learn. Is that the player that I think needs to sit there, learn that position? I don't really think so. He's not a right back. I do like him being able to play in those games like against fast attackers on the wings, and that's fine and dandy, but I don't think he's a player.
That's not who we play against most of the time, right? And that's kind of the issue we found is like, we need Xavi to be able to adapt against these teams because, whether you like it or not, this Rayo team is very good, by the way, right? And coached very well to press. I mean, if you look at their positioning, like you were alluding to,
disciplined.
They did a really good job. They are super disciplined. Yeah. And they did a very good job of, having, one player at times being able to cover two, depending on where the ball is. And they did a good job of kind of choking out Pedri and Gavi from receiving the ball as well as Busquets. And so, that is exactly what we're referencing, right? Is that Araujo or whoever the right back is needs to be able to go, inside, kind of act as another midfielder and help facilitate the ball and break down, draw a defender towards them, make a pass that can push it forward. Because we saw a few opportunities there where when Pedri was able to receive a ball and dribble forward, he was really able to create some havoc with Raphinha and getting the ball ahead. And like you alluded to as well, we didn't really ever have the ability to get some long balls going from our defenders all the way to our wingers. And so it just left us kind of frozen. And there were some exciting moments because when you have Dembele and Raphinha on the team, they're always going to have some magical moments with their amazing dribbling.
Sure.
But what we're looking for is like what is going to be the long-term right back solution. And I think you are getting kind of around my point, which is that Ronald Araujo is a great center back, and I'd much rather have him be a center back. And so, whether it's Sergino Dest getting favor of Xavi once again, or it's Kounde, who we know is very good at dribbling, I think he'll have a more comfortable time going inside and helping to break down defenses. One of the two solutions is probably preferred, and so I'm interested to see, where Xavi goes. And then I think, transitioning to our next point where we need to really have Xavi figure out what to do here is it comes in the midfield, right, Yus? Because the revelation that I think we all saw in this game was that, our midfield is kind of being choked out by the defense. Our fullbacks are not able to, go inside and create any passing lanes or any outlets to our wingers or Lewandowski. And so we were kind of choked up, making sideways passes a lot of times that weren't very effective. What Xavi did in the second half, which does show some adaptation to him, from him, is that he put in Frenke de Jong, who was able to get the ball low and then dribble it forward and kind of create lanes himself just by his dribbling, right? And there's something to be said there about the fact that we shouldn't rely on an individual player's brilliance to break through things, right? It's better if we have a structure and a team positioning and the team's drilled so that they know how to get the ball forward in those situations. But in this case, Frenke de Jong, with his unique talents, was able to do that. And I think Frenke de Jong clearly showed why he is a very important player of the squad. I'll keep my, very fervent point that I think Gavi is not ready to start every game, and certainly in these games where teams are playing very defensively, I'm not sure if he's the best starter for us. So what did you think, Yus? Like, how do you kind of see Frenke de Jong in this game and then see his importance to the midfield going forward?
Well, first off, I want to say he was a man on a mission. He saw the situation we were in. The first game of the season we're 0-0. We can't seem to score. He really seemed to put that effort in and took it upon himself to really push the ball forward and try to create something. And I really commend him for that because, listen, Frenkie has been having so much going on around him recently, and all the things in the media about him moving to Manchester United, yada yada yada. This guy came out and he performed what he was supposed to do, and I think he was a representation of coming out there and having a plan and trying to create something from that plan. And, being able to drop back, get the ball in that position, because there were some times where he was playing like a back three center back situation to receive that ball and move it forward. I really like that. And I think we do fall short of that with other players in the midfield. dropping back to receive the ball and even carrying it forward, making some dribbles or creating space or forcing defenders to move out of the position. Because, as we saw in this game, a lot of times the defenders were just man marking, or they were, poised where they were supposed to be, and we didn't really force them to move out of position. Now, when Frenkie de Jong came in, he just injected immediate energy and was able to force players to react to the situation, and that is the adaptation that we need our other players to really embody in these games. And so, just to really go into what you're talking about here and saying, like, what are we going to do about this midfield? How can we change it? Yeah, like Xavi was an effective player in the final third of the pitch, in which he would make runs into the box in situations akin to that. But at the same time, there's no point in that final third progression with the midfield if we can't even get the ball from the back to the front. And I think that's where we fell short here, is having that midfield really bolster the movement of the ball from the back to the front. And that, I think, is where we fall short here. And Frenkie de Jong had to take that upon himself and reflected that in that game, and it just really highlighted the fact of what we were missing in that game. So, I mean, he has to start over Xavi, right? Like I don't think there's a question
I think
here.
what has to happen, right, is that we can't keep letting teams basically do the same tactic and screwing us for the last few months, right? Which is that all they have to do is cut the passing lanes to the pivot, to Busquets, and then, essentially mark Xavi and Pedri, and then, our team doesn't really know how to get the ball forward, especially when it's Araujo right back, not cutting in, and then it's Alba, who had a very odd game. I'm definitely a Jordi Alba supporter, but it was not his best game, I think we all know.
But it makes everything predictable, right?
What do you mean?
Like, if what you're just saying right there, right, we all watch this game, you look at it and you go, okay, so the ball has to go to Busquets because Pedri and Gavi are marked. There's no other passing lanes in this situation. The only thing we have is our wings with Alba and Araujo, and Araujo's not making any runs forward as well as Jordi Alba, so the ball has to go to the wings. So their defensive structure is just, okay, let's cover the midfield, make sure they don't have any passing lanes. The ball has to go wide, and then we cover them on the width. And then that was the name of the game. Yeah, we did take 20 shots on goal. We couldn't score. But that is a reflection of, I think, of our offensive capabilities with Raphinha, Dembele, Lewandowski, Pedri in that situation, and even Fati later in the second half. I think those players are just good enough to overcome, once the ball gets to that final third, to overcome the situation and be able to create chances. But the more we rely on that slim chance of them just creating something very minute in these small situations, I think we're going to struggle, because Rayo was able to counter us in a few situations and take advantage of our poor structure, our poor defensive structure, in which we left too many holes for them to execute. And that also goes to, it's not just the holes that are existing, it has to do with, in my opinion, some positional awareness from some of our center backs, from our full backs, and even our midfield, So I think there is just too many things that are compounding, which makes Rayo, even a very disciplined team, very easily overtake our offensive capabilities here in this game.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think what we're kind of covering is just how Xavi needs to adapt, right, against teams who play a low block and then try and get us on the counter. And it's a little bit. It's a little bit frustrating because Raphinha and Dembele have this great characteristic between the both of them, that they can switch sides, which is something that was kind of like a shiny whistle we saw in the preseason, and we thought it was going to work really well. But I feel like part of their issue in this game, and I do think Dembele created a few opportunities, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, where Pedri and Raphinha had some very good very good expected goals from shots they had. And I think they had a chance to put in at least one there between the two of them that Dembele created. But I think part of the issue too is that both of them are cutting inside a little bit too much, right? Like we have to learn how to play with Robert Lewandowski, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Lewandowski and Messi, right? Two of the greatest finishers of all time. I think I feel confident saying that. And it just didn't seem like we're getting a lot of opportunities for Robert to kind of finish a play, right? And that's because so many of the times what you see with Raphinha and Dembele is that they're cutting into the middle, which then just allows, Rayo to kind of have their already congested low block and then just, kind of pressure all of the players in the box and not have any, open players who are making runs, right? That was the main issue.
Sure.
And I feel like what we need to have is Raphinha and Dembele need to be able to stay wide more often and get crosses into the box, because Lewandowski, I think he has a great head. He's got a great legs, right? He's got a great ability to finish with almost all parts of his body, and we just haven't seen that yet, right? Like if you think back to the cliche Clásico 4-0, the Valencia game, right, the Atletico game, those games that we like so much. What was the 1-2 combo that worked out so often for us? It was Dembele bombing down the right side, getting across into Aubameyang, right, and he would head the ball in or he would get a goal somehow. And we now have a much better striker than Aubameyang, right? Someone who's more clinical in Robert Lewandowski, and so I need to see more of those opportunities, right? I don't need to always see Dembele and Raphinha kind of cutting into the middle, trying to find each other for a shot. I need to see Robert Lewandowski put in positions to put the ball in the back of the net, and I think that's what makes this kind of hard, right, ladies and gentlemen? Is that the game? It wasn't awful. It wasn't like it was the worst performance I'd ever seen from Barca, or that I'm super upset. It's just that there are some adjustments Xavi needs to make, and they are similar. We're facing similar defenses that kind of stifled us last season, and so people, and I think this is reasonable, people want to see us make those adjustments, early on this season to show that we're not a one-dimensional team, right? If you think back to our video with Jalil, the purist, when we talked to him, I kind of had a question to him. I was saying, hey, Jalil, like the end of last season when we kind of fell apart, do you blame that more on the injuries and the depth issues we faced, or was that more of Xavi getting figured out? And I think, we're all hoping that it's not Xavi being figured out. So then why don't you transition us to the last point that we kind of have about Xavi and training?
Yeah, so, and I think you kind of touched on it in a sense of, what does Xavi need to do? What does he need to adjust? Like, what's going on here? Is he being figured out, right? And I think it sort of ties in here because at the end of the day, we kind of seen a trend in the Barca games of last season and this first game in which I still think, or I do think, there's some deficiencies in our training, which things like we're holding the ball too long. We do have points in which we have one-touch passes and we know where the players are and we drive the ball forward, but there's too many times where I spot a pass that could have happened, but we hold the ball, we wait, we let their defense form, creating that block that we're talking about, and then we don't have any opportunities. Then we have a lack of leading passing. I think a lot of times we used to see Dembele in situations where, the ball goes forward, he has to sprint to it, get it forward, he's a one-on-one with a defender, and then he's able to make some magic, maybe even a cross, as you mentioned earlier, on that right touch line, for example, which we didn't really see in the Rayo game. A lot of times on the left side. There's a lack of press, in my opinion, and I think that was highlighted by the Frenke situation, in which there was times where he was able to play a lot more aggressive defense in their third of the pitch, and we were lacking that. I think we've mentioned this before. We're very lackadaisical in situations where we're not very alert, and then I think we waste opportunities in terms of free kicks, corners. A lot of times I don't think they're very structured. What's that?
What do you think the issue is with our free kicks and corners?
I just feel, or I don't just feel, but when I watch these games, it seems, one, that we go for goal way too often, and I don't think we have the players that can make those shots in our current squad. They're very young. One is that they're not Lionel Messi, who is a god amongst men with free kicks, and as you saw against many teams, he's able to score them, but we haven't seen that, right? And so why are we taking free kicks from, outside the box, well outside the box, to try to score, when instead we should have a structured plan? We should have a drill that we've run a million times. Why aren't we seeing a drill that is run in this situation, at least an attempt to cause the defense to not know what's going on, and then we, take a higher percentage shot on goal? So I think we fail there. I would love to see more trick plays or drawn out plays, something that just seems more structured, in my opinion. And then lastly, I think our positional awareness. There's a few times in this Rayo game in which I saw players just not know the man they're supposed to cover. They don't know where they are. There was a situation in which Christensen, instead of following his man, he turns around to look where the ball is going, which is behind him, and then he loses position of his man. Then Ronald Araujo is also looking at the ball, missing the position of the man behind him, and it ends up in a great high opportunity chance for Rayo. But luckily, Ter Stegen, I believe, saves that one. But we can't have two defenders, one being someone that we rely highly upon, Ronald Araujo, as like someone we regard highly, I should say, in his defensive capabilities, just totally being oblivious to the attackers behind him. And same with Christensen, right? Like in this situation, he knew where the attacker was, but instead he draws his attention to the ball, not man marking and leaving opportunities, holes in the attack for Rayo. So I think all these things, are representations of some lacking or lack of training. We need to really we've heard rumors about this before, right? We've talked about how the training is not intense enough.
Well, but Lewandowski recently came out and said that he's been more tired than he thought. So I think some of it is changing.
Okay.
And
that's
I think,
good.
to kind of wrap it up, what part of what you're getting at and part of the issue with having one of these videos where you get too critical on the first game of the season is that a lot of these players are learning, right? Araujo's not playing in a position he's normally in, so his defensive awareness might not be as high as it should be. Christensen is his first time on the team. He's learning how to play with Eric Garcia and with Busquets and with the rest of the back line. Raphinha's first game here, Dembele's first time really at Barca playing with another really good winger on the end. Lewandowski, his first game. So there's a lot of learning to be done, right? And, it's going to be interesting in the next few weeks to see whether Xavi is kind of confirming the way he wants to play and that the changes we're recommending he doesn't take, and he thinks that if the players are just more used to his instructions, things will go well, or if Xavi adapts, right, and understands quickly that maybe his plan needs to be improved on and he needs to make some adjustments in the way we're going against these teams like Rayo. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. We're really excited. We got a big game coming up against La Real on Sunday. We will be here recording a video. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate all the support. Let us know in the comments your thoughts. Have a nice week.